So we've had some breaks in this soul winning series just because, we had a guest soul winning tips preacher last week and everything. But we're still in the section on, being a silent partner versus being a speaker. And we talk about the silent partner do's, the silent partner don'ts. This is about how to transition from being a silent partner to a speaker. And I would say every single person, just about everybody starts off as a silent partner. It would be very rare for you to start off. I mean, if you have a church that you can be a part of to go soul winning, most likely you're going to start as a silent partner and slowly work your way up. And we actually have a great example in the Bible that gives us a lot of insight, and that's with Moses. Because when Moses started, he did not want to be the speaker, right? He made every excuse under the sun. He says, I am not eloquent, neither heretofore, nor since thou hast spoken on thy servant, but I am slow of speech and of a slow tongue. Now, I believe that's the way that Moses felt about himself. But obviously, if God calls you to do something, then you have the ability to do it, right? And so when God calls us all to be soul winners, that means that every single person that's saved has the ability to be a soul winner, right? Moses didn't feel that way, but that is the truth. And then it eventually says in verse number 16, and he shall be thy spokesman, referring to Aaron unto the people, and he shall be to thee instead of a mouth, and thou shalt be to him instead of God. So what God eventually says when he gets mad at Moses is, Aaron will be the speaker. You can be a silent partner. And then if you're reading through the book of Exodus, you don't have to get too far before guess who's the speaker? Moses. Moses ends up becoming the main speaker and not Aaron, right? And the same is true probably for most of us, that when we first started going soul winning or first knew that we needed to go soul winning, we probably thought, I could never do this, it's not my ability, and maybe we went out of obligation. Like we tagged along and said, I'm supposed to do this, but I can't really do this. And then eventually, you know what happens after several sessions? You find yourself, you memorize some verses, you see people get saved. It's like, I want to do it now, right? And so this is what takes place with Moses, so we can learn from the lesson of Moses here in the Bible, being a silent partner and becoming a speaker. And so what are some tips about how to transition from a silent partner to a speaker? Or even maybe you're a speaker, but you're not that confident. Maybe you go out soul winning, and a lot of times you're just like, I can't do it today. And then, what can you do to get more confidence? Well, memorize the verses. We've already talked about that, but if you memorize the verses, you find yourself having a lot of confidence. Because you're not really afraid about what if I run into Ungdating Da, or what if I run into a Mormon. You're not really worried because you already know the verses to prove Jesus is God, right? So you're not that worried if you run into them. Not that we ever really have those situations. How many times do you get into a huge argument with Mormons? Not that often. If they're not interested, you just move on. So it's really like a hypothetical situation that almost never takes place. The truth is, when you're first starting, the more verses you have memorized, the more confidence you have. We talked about working on your plan and practicing it. When you go soul winning, you only have opportunities just from Vincent, but in your free time, you can practice it. It becomes fresh in your mind. And like everything, when you first learn something, you do it a lot, and then it becomes second nature, and then you never forget because you're regularly going soul winning. So practice your plan, memorize the verses. And another thing you can do is just pray that God's going to give you boldness. Pray that God's going to give you the ability to be a speaker if you're someone that really struggles with it, right? And so look, obviously some people are more naturally outgoing than others, and you might think, well, I'm naturally shy, so I could never be a confident speaker. But here's the truth, a lot of people in our church that go soul winning are probably naturally shy. I did not think of myself as being naturally outgoing. I had a desire to be a pastor when I was 19 years old, shortly after I got saved, but I didn't consider myself a good public speaker. That terrified me, right? And what I've also found, because I used to think, if so-and-so gets on fire for God, since they're really outgoing, they're going to do great things for God. But I've actually found it's kind of the opposite a lot of times, because, and I think this is the understanding philosophically, if someone is naturally shy, they've learned to adapt to their shyness. They've been in many situations in life where they feel uncomfortable and they have to learn to deal with it. Whereas if somebody is naturally outgoing and you throw them out soul winning for the first time, they're in a new situation because they don't feel that confident anymore. Because nobody feels confident the first time they go soul winning. So what I've actually seen is a lot of people that are naturally outgoing, you think they're going to really get on fire for soul winning, but in actuality they're just like so uncomfortable because they're not used to being uncomfortable. They don't know how to deal with it. Whereas if you're naturally shy, you might learn to adapt to the situation. All of us are going to feel a bit uncomfortable as we're preaching the gospel because it's new to us, it's something different. But if you want to go from being a silent partner to a speaker, or from a silent partner to a more confident speaker, you memorize the verses, you work on your presentation. It would be like anything. If you're giving a speech in school, how do you get more confidence? You practice it, right? The more you practice it, the more you know, the more confident you're going to be. It works that way in the secular world. It also works that way with the gospel. If you have all the salvation verses memorized and you practice your routine, you're just going to be more confident as you go out there. But if you never memorize the verses and you don't really know what to say or where to go, you're going to feel really awkward, right? So really the way to go from being silent to a speaker, it's not about natural ability. It's really about just putting in the effort, memorize the verses, practice your soul winning presentation. I get it. If you're new, you're naturally going to be a silent partner, and that's okay. But you don't want to be like that forever. You want to switch from being like Moses at the beginning to the man who just is like doing all these amazing things, right? So all of us start off like Moses when he's the silent partner, but the goal is to be like Moses and switch where basically you realize in my own flesh, I'm not a good speaker, I don't have the ability, but I'm doing it through the power of God, and then you do have the ability to do it. So anyways, that's our tip, going from a silent partner to a speaker. Obviously, we're happy. Any silent partners at our church, we're happy to have you come. Other people that maybe are new to soul winning, that don't come soul winning, hey, if you can convince them to come, you can let them know they can be a silent partner and learn. It's not as intimidating as they think, and that's great. But eventually, our goal is that people switch from silent to speaker. So anyways, that is our tip for today. We'll have